or
So,
7.
well, yeah, well, okay. So there's three S's, and like I said, it's about a half. So it's about a second and a half for the S part, and you've got the. So figure 2 to 3 seconds to say hiss. So it's that shorter, like 2 seconds. So
Hiss.
there you go. See, that's like
Okay.
scientific. It's scientific. Okay,
Yeah.
folks.
Because we started off with
Well,
now we're
yes, that's 3 seconds because that's seven S's. And hiss has got three S's, so it's math.
I just want to be precise. That's all. That's
I
it.
want to
Mark.
be precise as well. Hello, everyone. Speaking of being precise, welcome to another edition of the Spoiler Room. Thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite drink with us. We appreciate you as we talk movie spoilers, and tonight we continue our Sinema Serpentes month, which is great for a guy who has a lisp. So I didn't think about this ahead of time. I apologize, everyone. But today it's kind of fitting because with me, of course, is my right hand man, guy always coming back for more, Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian Simmons. How are you?
I'm doing great. Wait, that's Tony the Tiger. Never mind.
That's Tony the Tiger. That's that, but that does have RRR in it, which there you go. See, but speaking of films from India, we're looking at one today, and tomorrow I'm going to spoil it already for Ian, though he can shill it at the end of the episode as well. I will have the fortunate pleasure of being on his podcast to talk about another film from India that is completely different from tonight's. Tonight's film is Hiss. How you doing, Mr. Ian Simmons? How we doing this evening?
I'm doing great. As I mentioned in our Facebook message, tonight is the dessert before the vegetables. I don't know how we're going to get through tomorrow night's live stream, but tonight we're just going to have fun.
Tonight we are definitely going to have fun with this film. We have Hiss. I have the physical copy right here. Hiss, haha, from 2011 from Viva Pictures. Yeah, why won't you, sir, give us a synopsis of Hiss?
I'll try.
Or I can read it off the back of the DVD if you prefer not to. I could read it off the back of the DVD if you'd like. It's your choice.
Why don't you do that?
Okay. All right.
I just want to clarify. I bought the movie as well, but I bought it off of Amazon for like $3, the digital version.
Oh, you got the digital
rent
version.
it or buy it. I just bought it because it was literally $3.
What I love about this is this is from 2011, and they were ahead of their time with this DVD case because there's a QR code on it from 2011 that allows you to view the trailer.
Oh.
So you could scan this off of the DVD case and you could view the trailer of Hiss. So I thought that was interesting.
Why don't they do that still? That's a really good idea.
I don't know. That's actually not a bad idea, especially. Well, I bought this copy from Family Video, may it rest in peace, for $1. So this was one of the it was one of those where I bought it during the sale. But okay, we're gonna do it a little different since I have the physical media here. I did have it for. I wanted to hear you do the synopsis. Well, actually, we had Angelique do it. That was so much better than. Anyway, so here we go. Vengeance has a new sound. Hiss. Legend tells of a snake goddess who has the ability to grant everlasting life. When Jeff Doucette, who is dying of brain cancer and desperate for the goddess' gift of immortality, steals her snake lover, the snake woman, Malika Shirawat. I probably mispronounced that name horribly. I apologize.
No, I think you got it.
Takes on human form to exact her revenge and kill everyone who gets in her way. Vikram Irfan Khan, the town's police investigator, is thrown into investigating the gruesome murders while George relentlessly tries to lure the goddess to his lair. Starring Irfan Khan, that they already mentioned, from The Namesake and Slumdog Millionaire, and Malik Shirawat From The Myth and Politics of Love, Hiss will have you crawling in your seats.
I don't know if that's exactly. I wasn't crawling. What does that mean? Crawling in your seat?
I don't know. I don't write this. I just read it. I don't know who wrote. It sounds cool. Who cares if it makes sense? It'll have you crawling in your seats. So you're like, huh? Is that more than squirming? Is that And I mean, depends on how big the seat is. If it's a big seat, you could be crawling in it.
Yeah,
so, but
something. It's weird because the main. I still can't figure this out. I should have looked it up beforehand. But the Jeff Doucette, who's the guy who plays the villain in this movie, I was looking his credits up on IMDb because I'm like, he's got one of those faces like I've seen him before in something. He's been in a lot of stuff. I just can't remember where I recognize him from. But it turns out he was in the 1984 Ron Howard film Splash, which
yep.
I got heavy vibes of Splash from watching this.
This is kind of the horror version of Splash of sorts, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I could see that it's kind of like Splash, baby, kind of.
And Irfan Khan, I'm a huge fan of his. He was in you might remember he was in Jurassic World. He played the like the CEO who like reopened the park. He was also in another movie called, I think it was Puzzle, with Kelly MacDonald, which he was really good in.
Yeah.
I
forgot that was him in that in Jurassic. Yeah.
I'm confused by Hiss, Mark. Had you seen this before, right? You owned it.
I own it. I've seen this. This is like my third or fourth time watching this. So
your third or fourth time?
Yeah.
Let's tell me about. I gotta know your your history with
my history.
God damn it. Anyway, tell me.
I was looking. I had a number of years ago. I had an interest, a fleeting interest, and now I'm regretting not looking into it further, into films from India, from Bollywood films and such. And I saw this, and I'm like, a horror film from India. I'm not usually you see dramas or comedies or dance or romantic thing. It's not often in, at least on the rental shelves at Family Video, it wasn't often that you saw a horror film from India that was produced in India, and I'm like, huh. So I rented it. I liked the cover. The cover, half face, and I dug it. And then I got it when it was on the cheap on sale at Family Video, like I got most of my physical media. And I watched it again, and I've watched it now for the show, and I found just a charm to it. Not a pun intended, but a charm.
Say a snake charm.
A snake charm. I knew that was coming. When the minute I said charm, I knew no, not a snake charm, but still, I found a charm with it. The idea of this snake goddess, Naga, is still around, immortal in the form of snake, and being captured and exacting revenge. I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty cool, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, this isn't bad. I mean, it's for what its budget is, what you imagine its budget is, probably it was like, still, it was like, yeah, I'm in, I'm down. And I dug it.
I dug it too. Not a lot of people like this movie. Have you looked into it? Have you read the Wikipedia entry on Hiss?
I did not. I do. Well, I do know that the director, the original director, because this is a female director, which is another reason why it interested me, because the rise of female directors in horror films, and that it was an interest to me. Jennifer Lynch had directed. I'm like, oh, cool. I watched it and everything, but then I remember reading up later on that it was taken away from her basically in post-production, or she basically was like, yeah, no, that wasn't my editing.
She disowned the movie afterwards.
Yeah, she disowned it. Yeah.
And you know who Jennifer Lynch is?
That's is that Lynch's daughter? David Lynch?
Yes, I was going to say it's obviously Lynch's
No,
daughter.
David Lynch.
Yes.
The first name escaped me. It's been a
Yeah.
long day. Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
David Lynch's daughter.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's David Lynch's daughter. She disowned the movie. It was supposed to play at a couple of film festivals and was yanked. It was horribly panned by critics. Once upon a time, when I had suggested doing a horror movie for my podcast from India, I think you had recommended Hiss, and I got some pushback from people saying, "Don't watch Hiss; it's terrible." Now that I've watched Hiss, I can kind of understand where people are coming from, but I also love this movie, Mark. Unironically, I think it's kind of a remarkable, beautiful little horror movie.
It is, and that's part of the reason why I enjoy it so much. Again, I mean, people know I consume a lot of micro budget indie cinema, probably more than some YouTubers out there, many YouTubers out there, maybe I don't know, but I watch a lot of it. I enjoy it. It's just a genre I enjoy. I like to see filmmakers do a lot with a little, and you could tell that she was given a limited budget for this and they worked within their budget, but it's an interesting story. There's some very cool scenes in this film. There's some very cool moments in this film for sure. I think some people can't maybe get past some of the micro or smaller budget aesthetic as well from it. And being it's got two things against it in the Western cinema, and this is just a simple fact, unfortunately, is that one, it's a film from overseas, and it's a lower budget film from overseas. So those two things, unfortunately, are a bit of a hard sell in the U.S., especially for say people to accept or whatnot. So it already has kind of two. It's already got an uphill battle. And I understand some of the criticism on it, but if you watch enough B horror film, I'm like, this nestles right nicely into that, group of films that a lot of people enjoy, the B movies and such. So
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I think uh, if it were not necessarily given a higher budget, but if someone were to go back and redo the effects on Hiss,
Mhm.
give it a few more $1 million, I think a lot of those complaints would be gone because yeah, there are some great scenes here. I think the ideas behind the scenes of those dodgy special effects moments are really strong. Like when the giant snake woman appears at the end and exacts her revenge, and you've got, I'm jumping all over the place, but Irfan Khan, like the shocked look on his face as he's
Mhm.
watching something impossible happen, because he's been our character like all throughout the film. He's like a man of the law and a man of science and doesn't believe in myths and legends. When he comes face to face with this giant thing, yeah, I believe the look on his face. Now, maybe it's because they're like, "Here, look at this golf ball and be all scared. We're gonna put in a CGI snake monster later." And he was like, "What are you talking about?" But it was really effective. Um,
Yeah.
the practical effects I thought were spot on.
Mhm.
Like the aftermath of some of these snake victim bites was, just great. I think the low budget only really shows through in the CGI.
Mhm.
Otherwise, there's nothing particularly, cheap feeling about the movie that I could find.
No, there really isn't, and it's funny because there are some moments in this film, especially like you mentioned, the practical effects where it looks good. Now, the snake goddess is played, as we mentioned, by Malika, and she plays the snake woman. And initially, we see her in the beginning, and then uh, because we get this flashback of man, and we see the tribes and how powerful this goddess is and her effect on women, how she can really be a brutal god, in this flashback where she just basically made all the women bleed a certain way. And that was just like, holy crap, this film
That was
opens.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if this is tasteless or if this is art or both, but I'm like, wow, that's an opening 3 minutes right there.
It's an opening 3 minutes. So you get that flashback to where they're talking about Naga and how there's the stone of immortality in her. Yeah, it was 2300 BC is when the film kind of starts out, and then we jump ahead forward, and she's in snake form, and that's our villain, George, he takes the male while he's still in snake form, and he may stay in snake form. I'm not sure if he ever actually had a human form. And then she escapes, but then she transforms into a human, and the transformation scene actually is really effective and looks really good because it's mostly done practical. And I thought that looked good.
Oh yeah, there are a few different spots here where she's shedding her skin, and that whatever they made that, it's almost like a combination of flesh and almost like netting. It's so thick and knotted and scaly, and she's pulling it off of herself. It's not gross, it's just cool looking. It looks really real.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's the thing. It wasn't done grotesquely. And when the snake woman does appear, you're just like, oh, okay. She is a goddess. Um, and then there's an interesting bit right away where she runs across a couple of some ladies having a bath in a running river, and she manages to find clothes. I mean, I like the way they handled her character getting used to being human.
Yeah, and she doesn't I don't think she says anything in this movie. She has no dialogue, and typically, movies like this, when you've got a character who's silent throughout, they'll say something, like at the end. It's like, oh my god, it's like the Silent Bob thing, right? They
Yeah.
have one line or one word, but no, she stays committed to it, and she is, as you say, trying to figure out how to move and act in a world of people, and she the first hour of this movie is not very flattering towards, I would say, Indian men, because, and I think the film does have some stuff to say about the snake goddess being like this avenging force for, women who are being assaulted or oppressed in some way. But yeah, all the guys she runs into are trying to rape her or kill her or rape slash kill other women. And but
Mhm.
that even that scene, there's a women's shelter that she gets taken to, and put up for the night. And then at one point, someone is assaulting one of the other residents of the shelter. She turns into the snake, and we see kind of like the beginning of that attack. We don't see the aftermath until much later, and it turns out probably because she's like like an unthinking like killing machine. She killed both the perpetrator and the victim. We come to find out, which was
Well,
a surprise.
the one female she killed was the one that let the guy who ran the shelter. She let the guy in there. She was earning money by letting the guy go into the shelter.
Oh, okay.
That's
I
where
missed that.
yeah,
Okay.
that's they didn't it's in there. It's in a brief scene because what you have is it's a women's shelter, and she's in there with some other ladies, and you hear this really horrible act happening in the other room. And when they do the scene, you've got the guy and the horrible act happening to this one of the women there at the shelter. Then there's a woman behind the counter, and she either holding money or she was putting money away, but she just looks back indifferent, knowing what's going on, and that she's the one that got killed.
See, I caught that, but and maybe this is a not the greatest editing choice, but to me, like, I
No,
don't understand how she got into because when we find the two bodies together,
right,
he is laying on top of her, which is
right.
essentially where they were when the attack would have happened.
Mhm.
It's just, I guess, different people.
Yeah, it was different people. It was a little hard, and some of the other editing in here as well. You can see why Lynch may have had why she disowned it or whatnot, because some of the editing is a bit rough in spots, and that's one of them. But like I said, I've watched it like 3 times, so I cut it now. But
Yeah, I'll defer to you.
the other body is the woman who was running the shelter, who was allowing these things to happen for money, basically pimping out the women who are taking shelter from abusers, and yeah. And that's what I thought was interesting as well, is the story easily could have just been her searching for her lover, meeting up with our cop, Vinkram, played by Irfan, and meet up with him, and then she sticks with him the whole time, and then they could even have, normally this is the way, I'm just playing it out like cliche, the way it would normally, she meets up with him, he takes her in because she's mute apparently, and on the streets, brings her home, causes conflict with the wife's like, why are you bringing this woman here when we've just had this traumatic event happen, which was a miscarriage, which you're not quite sure if it was because of Naga coming into human form or not, but it's almost played at that a little bit, but they never explore it any further, and it makes me wonder what was on the editing room floor for that, because it was almost implied.
Well, I don't know that it's implied. I think there's an association because that happens pretty soon after the whole
She
like
transformed, yeah.
the whole like mass menstruation scene at the beginning.
Right.
Like our introduction to Vikram and his wife is that scene where she's having a miscarriage in the bathroom. But yeah, I feel like that's a coincidence.
It's
an
just
unfortunate
a
one.
parallel,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Mhm.
It could be a parallel because you have one birth not happening, and then you have the birth of the human form of Naga. It
Yeah.
could have been, pardon my big word, it hurts when I use these, but the juxtaposition between oh my god, I almost sound like a critic. I better stop that. I'll leave the big
You
words
better.
to the big words to you. That's why I have you on this show.
By the
No,
way, it's juxtaposition.
juxtaposition. Thank you. I appreciate that. What's other and interesting too, and another interesting character. I mean, we have Vinkram here, who has to deal. He and his wife are dealing with the fact that she has a miscarriage, but they're also have her mom staying with him, and she's got, I think, dementia, or not quite dementia, but she thinks that Vikram is a female at sometimes, and the way she talks about to him, she is a little bit you could tell that she has some kind of disassociative thing going on, to where how things are is not how she's seen them. So she talks to Vikram occasionally saying, oh, you're gonna find a nice man someday, and she's just like, okay, mom, whatever, I gotta go. It's like, you get the idea, this is normal. But
Right.
she's a sweet character at the same time, but there is something with her, but she's a snake goddess worshiper.
Yeah, she is, and it's easy to peg her as, because she's also kind of hard on Vikram and,
She is,
and his
yeah.
wife. Basically like the stereotypical mother-in-law who's living with the family. When are you going to give me a grandkid?
Yeah.
And later she's watching the news, and then she sees Vikram's new partner, who shows up, and he comes over for dinner, and she's like, I saw you on that show, and it's like, you mean the news?
Yeah.
But this character that we've seen in movies before, especially horror movies, you don't expect her to live. She's the kind of person who's kind of the obnoxious side character, regardless of her condition, that's probably going to end up getting like horribly murdered. But no, she has a really nice, I think, capper of a scene where
She
she kind
does.
of dies off screen, but appears to Vikram in a dream and gives him that like kind of movie insight, like fills him in on how to like solve the rest of the the
Yeah.
mystery of the snake woman. Which in the moment you're kind of like, what the hell is she talking about? And you realize, oh, it's because she's dead, and now she knows.
Right. She visits him in a dream and tells him where the lover is being held, and that the snake goddess, that woman that you met, yeah, she's on the rampage, and she's headed that way. Uh, by mentioning where she wants to be cremated, that's how she states that. She says she wants to be cremated in a specific spot, and that happens to be where this guy, the bad guy, is holding the snake lover. And that's what's interesting and that's what fascinates with this film on the surface. And when you read the back of it, you're just like, okay, snake goddess going on a rampage. But then you have these layers, like you have this mom character in here. You have, Vikram and his wife dealing with miscarriage. And then his life gets more complicated when he gets partnered with the nephew of an old buddy of his who saved his life.
Well, and that's the thing is I don't, and again, you've watched this movie more than I have, but I did not read it as the uncle saved Vikram's life. He says a couple of times that, you owe my uncle a great debt.
Right.
Towards the end, I think it's when they're having dinner, it comes out that the uncle is the one who introduced Vikram to his wife.
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right.
I think that's the debt. Now, normally in this kind of movie, that would be the big favor. Like either the uncle has blackmail on you, or he saved your life, or something like that. Especially, this is like one of the very few cop movies, TV shows, dramas, whatever, where the cop is just clean and you see his home life and he's got problems, but they're like, yeah, my wife and I are trying to have a baby and we really love each other. That's like, that's why I've got that haggard, world weary look. It's not a heroin problem. It's not a teenage, like, prostitute daughter and any of that stuff. He's just a regular guy trying to do his job and have a kid.
Trying to figure this out, and then he gets paired with this young partner, which he doesn't want. He wants to work alone, basically, and especially when the young partner is the nephew of a guy he's indebted to. It's like, oh, cripes. He's like, great, that's all I need. He doesn't want this responsibility.
Right, but the partner's, a nice guy too. He's not crooked. He's not an idiot. He's just an enthusiastic rookie cop. And damn it, when he bites it at the end, no pun intended, I was like, that really sucks.
It did suck. It sucked horribly. You feel so bad for Vikram. Yeah, when he buys it at the end, you're just like, oh shit, oh man, that sucks. And you don't even get to spend that much time with this character. But again, that's where I find a lot of interest in this film, is that we don't get a huge amount of time with these characters because we're jumping a lot back and forth between the cop and our snake goddess. But at the same time, you get connected with these people enough that you don't want bad things to happen to them. You care about them, and you want the bad guy to be horribly murdered, especially as he's electric shocking the snake to activate him.
He's electroshocking a snake. He's shooting his local, Indian henchmen, and doing horrible things to them at will. And basically, he's got this brain tumor that he believes the goddess will, heal him from. I don't know how he thinks that's going to work out, but
he does have a brain tumor, so he's not exactly thinking clearly either. He's desperate. He knows of this legend. He discovers the legend is real early in the film, and so he's like, oh crap, oh well, hell yeah, I'm going to go through with this. And then he regrets it. And any guy that crosses our snake goddess path who commits violence towards women, she crosses paths with this husband who beats his wife and kids, and he dies a horrible death, thrown on a fire after getting bit. But it's like all of the kills that she does are justified at least a bit. These are not, she's not just killing innocent people is where we're at. She's killing people who are committing some very brutal acts or trying to commit brutal acts towards her. The only person that I think she goes after, and I don't know if she was going to actually harm him or not, was the snake charmer, which, yes, folks, it's a horror film from India. Horror films are not immune to musical numbers.
No.
I loved that. I'm like, I'm watching it, and with the reputation of films for them, like, how are they gonna work a snake? Oh, that's how they work the dance number into it, because the snake charmer starts playing his music for his cobra he's charming, and she's a snake, so she starts dancing to his music. Meanwhile, it's during a festival of color. I forgot the name that they
Holy.
have. Was it
Holy?
Holy. So there people are hooping it up, drinking and throwing lots of color on each other, and then they start dancing. And so there's this dance routine that they've set up that makes sense within the context of the film, but we still get one in here. Not only her dancing, but the crowd dancing as well in the street. And I loved that. I love that bit as I'm watching it, like, oh my God, it's not a long one, but
I loved it too, and it's unfortunately, well, I mean, fortunately it's well done dramatically, but unfortunately, it's kind of a downer because you get these two reveler guys who find this, the snake goddess who's kind of like in the trance of the music, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna lead her up to this, flea bag room and have our way with her."
yeah.
And the snake charmer downstairs, he can hear the commotion, and he's like, "Something's going on up there, but I'm just gonna stay here with my cobra." But then he eventually splits, and that's the end of it for those two guys. Wow.
And he kind of suspects who she is from playing it, because he's aware, and the way he was playing and the way she was reacting, not necessarily, not just to his music, but the way his cobra acted again towards her. He's like, wait a minute. And then he heard the screams of the guys coming from the room, and he's like, oh, that's who that is. Okay, I'm out.
Well, no, he left before they started.
Oh, that's
screaming.
right. Yeah,
she was kind of like, freaking out.
Right.
And it's interesting because, I think that was those two were her first kills, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
Because the way she's freaking out, it's almost like she doesn't want to unleash the beast and attack them. She's like scared and she doesn't know what's going on. So it's almost like this Incredible Hulk kind of transformation. Like the beast comes out to aid the person, and you get the feeling that it's kind of a painful transformation. Anyway, it's not something kind of heroic or grand. Like we see her go through a couple of different metamorphoses throughout the movie. It all seems very unpleasant.
Yeah, the changing back from human to snake is not an easy. You get the idea. It is a labored. It's a labored act. Although she does actually eat one of the guys,
and then and that's one of the weird kind of moments that you can look at it as being kind of Sci-Fi Channel cheesy, or you can look at it as something you might see from The Daughter of David Lynch, an overhead shot of her laying on this mattress after she's just devoured the guy, and she looks kind of pregnant, but she's like got her mostly human upper body, but then like the scaly snake belly that she is slowly digesting this partier guy.
And then when Vikram and his partner show up later, they find squares of the parts that weren't digestible.
Well, right. Apparently she threw up the rest of it into this. It's almost like a human junkyard cube.
Yeah.
And it's really neat. They're like, yeah, we've got fibers. We think there's some bone. There's all this weird like clothing material. Is that a cell phone ringing from inside this blob?
And then the t-shirt that the guy was wearing that didn't get digested had Pamela Anderson on it. So they mentioned Pamela Anderson too.
It is with Pam Anderson.
2012. So yeah, the biology and her acts are interesting. Her character is very interesting. That's the thing, is you've got a lot of interesting characters. This film isn't that long, but there's a lot of stuff in here going on that they give enough. When she meets up with she tracks down the snake charmer, who she thinks might be a good connection to figure out, where her lover is. There's this wonderful chase scene through the streets that is well shot and everything. She's like dressed up kind of like a member of the Hand, like literally, all in black with the mask, and she's hopping from rooftop to rooftop and that, and the cops on the street trying to chase this guy down, the snake charmer.
Well, I thought was really cool is Vic Irfan Khan's character. He's pursuing people, and we've seen the crowded, Indian street market chase 100 times in movies. But when he has to jump over a guy who's coming through an alley, he does this like side to side parkour that's so casual It's not like, oh, I'm gonna do a crazy James Bond thing. It's almost like he was jumping over a chair. That's how quickly it happened. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, and he's, you know, and it's interesting because we've mentioned about how, you know, a lot of the violence, all the violence that happens are usually men towards women, but not only that, some of the areas where they're shooting this are not exactly the most pleasant areas, you could tell, for the city that they're filming this in. They're kind of, you know, partly in the rundown slum areas, because where they're running, there's a little boy. It's a sewer water trench of some sort. He's,
He's
you know,
pooping. Yeah.
he's pooping. You know, and it's showing a little bit of the other side of it. So I think part of this also was maybe intentional, maybe it's just because of the story was calling for it, showing a bit of the other side of India, or at least of the city, versus what you normally see, which is the flourishing colors and the costumes and all of that. And then where they're shooting some of these scenes are not the most you know, well managed or great locations, really.
Yeah, it does add some flair to it, I guess, because they do draw attention to that little boy. I actually had to rewind it and watch that scene again because I'm like, is he doing? Yeah, he is.
he's
Because
he's doing
a couple of people, he's like crouched, like almost at the level of a stair, like
right.
through an alley, and people jump over him trying to escape, and then they do almost like a comedy shot of like a close up of him, like, yeah, that's what he was doing. He's like, are people jumping over me while I'm trying to take a crap?
Well, yeah, well, that not only that, but where he was taking it, the rookie accidentally steps in the water and he acts very disgusted. So, you know, I mean, it's like
Yeah,
this is a local area that obviously this isn't the first time someone has decided to drop trowel, uh, you know, there, drop a deuce, there. And but yeah, some of the other locations too, like the location where they film where our bad guy is holding the snake, this abandoned factory area, which was really interesting to you know, it was a really interesting location, this warehouse. And even though he dispatches one of his bad guys, when our snake goddess finally realizes where her lover is, she goes after him, and we don't see her. We only see the aftermath because we're following the cop. And man, there's this one shot. One of this guys gets like crucified. It's
yeah, he's
like
like high up on a tall pole, and he's run through. It's really kind of gnarly.
it's gnarly, but it visually interesting. I mean, you know, the way it's shot, this film is shot, it keeps things visually interesting. I love the cinematography in this film.
Well, it's because when you see him up there, like the other bodies that Vic encounters when he's comes upon the henchman, they're like on the ground, and then I can't remember if he looks up or if the camera just happens to
Yeah.
extend its gaze upward, and you see this guy who's up there. It almost forces you to imagine like what happened. You can see like maybe he got grabbed by the mouth and then like whipped like and just flew up and landed in that position after he got kind of eviscerated by whatever was sticking out of that pole. Um, but yeah, I agree. I also like that when she finally, or when Vikram gets down into the basement, there's like that kind of final confrontation with the villain
George, yeah.
George, Mr. States,
Mr.
and
States.
the snake lady. He's wearing this weird like silver, almost like a radiation getup that's got like one too many eye holes on it. He's playing a comic book supervillain, and he's got the night vision goggles. So all of a sudden, it becomes Silence of the Lambs, and it just gets all crazy.
It does get a bit wild at the end. The ending is interesting. You know, the snake lover, because George, in his mental condition, he accidentally leaves the cage open, which is actually how the snake goddess is finally able to get her location specifically on the snake, or on her lover, is that he left the cage open, though he did have a net prepared for her to capture. So he kind of had a plan. of what he was going to do. George did, but still, when he dies, the snake lover dies. She really makes you feel it. Like you said, she doesn't really have any dialogue, but wow, she really sells the emotion, especially holding a dead rubber snake. I mean, it's obviously, not exactly the best snake puppet, but still, she sells the emotion.
Well, she also sells the emotion during the scene where she has sex with the snake.
Oh yeah, there is that. Yeah.
I mean, it's a CGI tongue, but like it's like full on Skinemax camera movements, except it's a woman having sex with a damn snake. And at one point, like it kind of disappears between her legs, and like it didn't go up there. What? I don't know if that's how it works, but wow, they went for it.
Just when you thought you saw it all, no. Well, it was her lover, and she just chose not to transform back into a snake. I mean, she is a snake, but it is weird, and of course, it's on purpose. But it's just odd seeing the snake and the lady intertwined.
It's the pocket python.
It's the oh god.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Yeah, wow, just wow. Well, it's not the first time though. The snake goddess misses her snake form as well as her lover, because there's a point where she's walking at the street at night and she comes across this street lamp.
Oh, that is such a cool shot and a cool idea.
So she sees the street lamp, and the street lamp reminds her of the snake lover, basically, of being a snake, with her snake companion, and she crawls up it in the coolest way. Kind of just.
Well, it's because I think the first time we see the lamp, like we see her in the street, and then it like pans up to the lamp,
right?
And it's almost up to us to notice that the way the lamp kind of bows out from like this thin neck to this wide head of the lamp, of the actual bulb or whatever, it looks like a cobra.
It does.
And then you notice that it curves. It's got the head, then it curved neck, and then straight down into the ground, the same way like we saw with the snake charmer, and the cobra like standing straight up, and then the giant head, and she climbs up and kind of cuddles with it. It's very sweet. Like this movie, kind of like Jurassic Park in a way, treats the monsters strictly on a biological level. Like they're not evil. They're not out to like kill people. I think the whole idea of her attacking the men who are attacking the women, that's where you get sort of into the psychology of like, she's not just a snake. She's got some kind of human reasoning in there to understand what's going on. But for the most part, yeah, it's all about like instinct and what would happen if a snake became a person. What would that look like in the real world?
Well, they also mentioned, not just immortality, but I think at one point something about fertility or whatnot, and even that point, they say she's out for vengeance, and that, maybe when she kills the guys that try to rape her. She kills them in self-defense. She kills the other two sets of people that she runs across. The one guy who beats his family, and then the women's shelter abuser. She kills them almost out of. Part of it, I think, is because of who they are, but also if you go by the animal instinct, she is protecting the females of the the group or whatnot, because
and they're young,
and they're young, because that's just her job. She's a protector of that, and then.
But I mean, there's not like I mentioned before, she's a silent character, so there's no grand like speech. Yes, she is a goddess, but she is very much operating on our plane of existence. I don't know if she could communicate with people, like what that would even be like, and the film doesn't bother to address it, which I think is fine.
No, it doesn't have to. You could piece it together yourself, which I like. I like films that don't necessarily give you the full explanation. They give you enough here so you can piece stuff together if you're paying even half attention to what's going on. You get her motivation, you get, Vikram, what he's doing, and even George, on one hand, you're like, this guy's just slimy. He's constantly sweating, but then he's got a brain tumor. He's like, so even that part, you're just like, okay, he's done vile shit. Don't get me wrong, but he's also got a brain, and by giving him, I think by giving him a condition makes people at least take a beat with that character and go, okay, he's a bad guy. He's got this condition. And I think for some audience members, it might get into their brain, and maybe I'm just digging too deep, making lakes out of puddles like I like to do. But you think about, well, what would I end up doing? Would that, if I had a brain tumor or whatnot causing that, would I go to extremes? I wouldn't, but you know what I mean? It just, I think it puts maybe a little bit of a question into it. Not a lot. You're still supposed to hate the guy. You do hate the guy. He's torturing snakes and shooting people just at random. At the same time, though, he does have that condition. So it makes you maybe call into question at least a little bit, what's causing it.
I feel like, because he's painted as villainous from the get-go.
Yeah.
He's a bad guy with a ticking time bomb in his head.
Right.
I feel like if you wanted to explore, more of the sympathetic aspect, you'd see him as someone who perhaps had found that he had it. Maybe he's a wealthy guy who found that he had this brain tumor. It was like reaching out to like explore different medicines and religions and faiths and treatments all over the world. He found one, but then as he's getting close to it, he gets frustrated because he can't bring the goddess and the guy together. That, but that's a completely different kind of movie. This movie, I think, needs a villain, and it's got one.
Oh yeah.
The guy's his last name is, he's referred to initially as Mr. States. His first name is George. I feel like this is like a George W. Bush hangover character from 2008.
They're making, they're totally making a little bit of a statement jab at the Western world right there. Oh, yeah. No, he's totally he's called George, States, but any, Western world, Britain as well as the United States. He's a jab at at that as well, with him being the villain. There's no hiding that. And and like I said, I'm not saying that they give you complete sympathy for it. I think it just throws just a little bit, like little morsels, like you have with the other characters in here. There's, some of the other characters, you just get the little bit of morsel. On the whole, he's a bad guy. He was probably a bad guy from the beginning, but at the same time, like, it just throws that little bit, and then you just go, nah, he's villain. But
you get a couple of things in here, like left turns that you wouldn't get in another movie of this kind, because he's a bad guy and he wants to get this, thing. He could have just been a guy who's seeking immortality, like a Bond villain, right?
Right.
But you add that brain tumor aspect, and you really feel why he really needs, not only wants this, but needs it. But the other thing is, he doesn't get it. Like other movies, kind of like Swamp Thing or something, he would get the power he's seeking and then become like a giant force that has to be reckoned with. He would turn into a giant snake monster, etc., etc. And that doesn't happen here.
No, it doesn't. She especially after her snake bow dies, she exacts some serious revenge on
her bow constrictor.
Yes, her bow constrictor. She exacts some serious revenge on good old George States and heads back, to the woods too. She doesn't like she stick around or whatever, or waiting for whatever sequel or whatever. She heads back.
Well, this movie has the Critters ending, where you cut back to, oh look, there's a bunch of eggs and one of them's gonna hatch. But the nice thing about it, it's not a horror movie Critters ending. It's a horror movie, but it doesn't have a horror movie ending. You see it hatch, instead of like a little mutant like snake baby child come out, it's just like a little baby snake.
It's a little baby snake. That's all. Just a little baby snake. Let you know that it will carry on. So
you juxtapose. There's that word again, with Vikram and his wife delivering
their baby,
and then the snake goddess delivers her baby. Yeah, it's
well,
really
and
nice.
then And then there's, it's an unspoken implication possibly that because they do mention it in here about how Vikram and his wife, how this is not the first time she's miscarried. This has happened before. They've been trying for a while, and this keeps happening. Now he saves the snake goddess, and she, and now his wife, because they do meet briefly in the police headquarters, because he asks her to, take care of her. She's the one that takes her to the shelter because his wife works at the shelter.
Which
Again, I think something is missing in editing there, but
yeah, Maya is his wife's name, played by Divya Dutta. I think she's really terrific. The one bit that I question though is if she's working at this women's shelter where the person who's like running the door is like taking money to let a rapist in, how much did she know?
Right. Well, it was at night and she works days, so you never know. I mean,
yeah, nobody talks about those things at the women's shelter. I'm sure. Nobody knows nothing.
Again, there might be something on editing, floor too. It's hard to say, but yeah, no, I that's what I kind of was wondering as well. Wait, she worked at the shelter, but there's other definitely a lot of evidence in other cases where people had absolutely legitimately no clue some nefarious stuff was happening at the place where they work. I mean, that's it depends on how well the bad people doing the nefarious things cover up their tracks, I guess. Maybe it's hard to say with that, but they do meet briefly, and you get the impression that possibly the snake goddess may have had something to do with the successful birth of the child that they have, as possible, thanks to, and it may just be coincidence, but like you said, the way that they play it off with each other and the fact that they did have that encounter with her makes you wonder, well, maybe the snake goddess helped them finally have a child.
I think it works, either way. I think it's
Either
a
way.
nice idea that, maybe it's not even a deliberate thing because again, you don't get the sense that she is going around like bestowing wishes on people. There's no like speech like, "Oh, you've helped me. Now I'm going to help you." It's
Right.
just a cosmic coincidence maybe, but either way yeah, it's like I said, I wasn't prepared for this movie. There's so much here. I think this is great, like legitimately.
And that makes me smile that you did, because that's what I found too. Like I said, when I went into the film, I was just thinking, okay, snake woman killing people. All right, cool. And then you get all these other layers and things going on. I'm like, well, I didn't expect this. And it adds at least a bit more. And it's an interesting approach to where you could see where easily they just could have been taking the road very much traveled with this film, but they do add enough little spins on things that keep it a little more fresh, that keep it interesting, to where you're like, okay, this isn't just a cliche. He isn't a secret alcoholic hiding it from his wife. He isn't taking out the fact that he, once again, unfortunately, he and his wife, he and Maya have lost their child. He's not taking it out on the prisoners or whatnot that they you know what I'm saying? Because
I do. It's you do get this sense that he's this beleaguered cop. I love the one bit where he goes into the police station. You got the one guard who's kind of attention. The other guy is kind of screwing around because he doesn't realize the boss man has come in. But when Vic sits down, he takes off his glasses, and you notice, oh, he's got like some of the paint on him, like he just got back from patrolling, holy duty again. Like, man, this guy's got it rough. Plus, he's not into. I think he makes reference to being Christian, because he makes some kind of a remark about like like he's not into this other religious ceremony and stuff, which is a nice little tidbit. But yeah, there's definitely a lot here.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised. I do want to mention the practical effects, which are great, were done by Robert Kurtzman, of K&B fame, which I didn't know until I looked that up on Wikipedia. But that explains why that stuff, regardless of what the 3D kind of bad CGI effects look like, the practical stuff really can't be beat.
Yeah, and there's a lot of talent both in front and behind the camera, and it's just a shame that it sounds like in post the producers decided to take it upon themselves to to do the movie rather than letting the filmmaker do their vision, because it makes me wonder, just could this film have even been better in if they would have left it to her vision versus them.
It's hard to say, because one of the first things you'll see about Jennifer Lynch, if you look on Wikipedia, is that her debut film was Boxing Helena from 1993,
That's true.
Which was so bad that it got Razzies that year, and she didn't direct another movie for 15 years.
That was the Julian Sands one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Sherilyn Fenn.
But she'd come back. She did some episodes of American Horror Story, which were really good. So she did direct 4 episodes of the Jeffrey Dahmer series recently. So apparently, according to IMDb, so she's done a lot of the TV stuff. So she went
to movie jail for a longer sentence. Then she got out. Then she had to go back in, and now she's on probation. Is that what we're saying?
she went to TV. It looks like she mostly went to a TV afterwards. Not as much
to Netflix.
To Netflix. Nice. Yeah. So there you have it, folks. Hiss. This is a film that has really grown on me. The few times I've watched it, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it the last time. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I was wondering how you would, especially as you've been dipping your toe more into cinema from India and the surrounding area. I was wondering how you would, how you would take this film. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, at least, and didn't go, what the hell did you make me watch? What the hell is that?
And that's the part of the great thing of exploring Indian cinema, but also I'm worried about blind spots, because I'm so fascinated. And we talked a bit about this when we talked about Tumbad last month. I don't know how much of this is my fascination as a Westerner, learning about culture and myth and history and stuff through these dramatizations, versus maybe to someone who's grown up in that culture, maybe these movies are crap, and we're just so enamored with this new world of oh, this is all great, and dude, this is the White Castle of Indian cinema that you're so in love with.
White Castle. Hey, White Castle can be delicious too on a 3 a.m. bender.
Once a year, yes.
Once a year. Your gut will allow it once a year. I don't know. But it might be, but at the same time, I don't think so. But I don't think so.
I'm kidding. I just don't.
But that's why I always enjoy looking at not so much necessarily the big hyped, though. RRR is just a phenomenal film. It's probably one of my top films of the year. But you look at I like looking at some of the indie stuff, some of the B horror stuff, some of the other stuff from other countries, because you can see similar approaches. So it's great to see micro budget, small budget indie cinema, B horror, how they take similar approaches to stuff, but there's also a different spin on things. Their approach, while the techniques and the aesthetics are similar because they're all working on similar budgets, the technique and how they approach this material can be different. And Hiss, like we said, this easily could have been far more of a tropish type, just straight B monster horror film. But there's extra bits here and there that I think keep it interesting. And that's why I love watching all different types of cinema from all different countries, because especially with the indie cinema, because it's always fun to see what can be done, what they do in other countries with small budgets. So
yeah, I mean, I'm watching Hiss, I'm thinking, why can't our generic, American horror movies be, at least half this good?
What, you don't want to watch another 2 hours of a clown killing people brutally? What?
I have not watched Terrifier 1 or 2.
I enjoyed 2 more than 1, but they're both ones they aren't bad films at all. I'm not saying they are, but they're entertaining slasher films by any means. It's just I guess it depends on what and how much horror you consume, I think, on how you receive those films, how well, how grand or oh my God, you receive those films. And it's just like maybe it's just like with like you were saying with films like Hiss, is that depending on how much you consume, maybe like you said, maybe this is the White Castle of cinema, of Bollywood, that they're like, oh, you like Hiss, huh? Yeah, okay, here's a slider for you, go over there in the corner, there you go.
I just don't want to be in that position where I love everything and I can't tell, like, oh, I'm watching something bad.
Yeah.
It can't all be great, but maybe it can all be great. I just don't know. I'm so new to this.
And you know what? And the way I look at it sometimes is it may not always be great, but it'll be interesting. Because you can have that. You can have something that is maybe not necessarily great, but at least interesting, a different something, to where overall the project where you're just like, oh yeah, that was like, but at the same time, like, but they did do this versus this.
Yeah, there's going to be something to talk about, something to take away from it. Yeah,
exactly. And hopefully you took something away from this tonight, folks. Hope you enjoyed our conversation of Hiss. We're coming near the end of Sinema Serpentes month. Hope you've enjoyed our exploration in a serpent horror. We've got one more on the chopping block next week, which is another J-Lo film. No, I'm not making it a tradition where we end each month on a J-Lo film, though I'm sure I could probably work some magic and figure out how, but no. But we are looking at Anaconda next week. But before we get to there, now is the chance for my co-host here to get the license to shill. So please, shill away, Ian. Please let the folks know where they can find your stuff at.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. But mostly I'm doing stuff on YouTube. So if you look up Kicking the Seat on YouTube, you'll find me there. And tomorrow, or probably in the past tense when you're watching this episode, if you're not catching it live, but if you are catching it live, you can join Mark and I tomorrow on the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel live at 8 p.m. Central. We're going to be talking about another Indian film. We alluded to this on the pre-show, so you got to subscribe to Mark's Patreon to get all that goodness. We're going to be talking about a very different Indian film called Sardar Udham. Sorry, let me try that again without a frog in my throat. Sardar Udham, which is a historical drama that's 2 hours and 45 minutes long. If you want to catch up beforehand, you can watch it on Amazon Prime. Have some tissues ready, because you are not prepared for this movie. I guarantee it.
Have some alcohol and some tissues ready, because you're going to need both to get through it, especially. Yeah. You'll have to tune in tomorrow to hear us talk about why we think that. So,
yes. So, yeah, join us then. And all good stuff. And thank you, Mark, for agreeing to go on that journey with me.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm always open to do things, even if they aren't exactly in my wheelhouse. But I always say I'll watch anything once. And if you've followed my YouTube channel over almost 17 years now, you'll see, that guy watches just about anything. So, so there you have it. Thank you so much, folks. And I would just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.